Welcome to the Biz Coach Show, brought to you by My Biz Coaches. Our show is focused on giving entrepreneurs the edge they need to succeed. Learn more at mybizcoaches.com. Our guest today is Koytt Nichols, Regional Managing Partner for Galt Financial. Galt is a software as a service company providing personalized consulting services such as financial coaching, cash flow mapping, risk management, and more. They transform the way you allocate your business funds, and they empower you to adopt the same strategies used by large corporations to achieve growth and scalability. They stand in the gap between Wall Street and Main Street. Learn more at jgalt.io/K Nichols. Awesome. Well, Koytt, it is great to have you with us today. How are you doing?
Doing great, David. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Our pleasure. And Eric, always great to hang out with you. How are you doing today?
David, I'm doing well, trying to stay cool in this warm weather, but otherwise doing well and excited to be here. So thank you.
Absolutely. Hey, that's a full-time job staying cool in Arizona. So good luck with that. Well, Koytt, as I said, great to have you with us. We've got a great show lined up, and I know you've got a lot of great insights for our audience. But before we get into that, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and kind of what took you to Galt?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'll start a little bit back. I'm living in Scottsdale, Arizona right now. I'm originally from small town south of Kansas City, Spring Hill, Kansas. So went to KU, local guy, and then after college, I got the bug for the financial world when I went to Singapore and worked on some things. And so once I came back to the States, I was all about the financial world. I joined a Fortune 100 company and built my own book of business as a financial advisor for about 6.5 years. And then, just wanted to get into some alternative investments and stuff of that nature. And, that's about that time. That's when I needed some gray hair on my head. And I decided to go back to school for my MBA. And I did that in Arizona, actually. So, I started that and I moved out here as well as started my own business to kind of supplement me when I was going to school. After that was done, I ran into Galt. Galt's a great company. We immediately kicked it off because they have such a passion for helping business owners. And so we really connected in that regard. And, they were filled with a bunch of entrepreneurs that do the same thing. So it seemed like a great match. So, and here we are now.
Awesome. Cool. Well, that's a fun journey. And hey, at least you have hair on your head, even if there's a little gray. So you're lucky for that. Awesome. Well, hey, Eric, tell us a little bit about how you first connected with Koytt.
Yeah, great question. So I initially was introduced to Galt by one of Koytt's peers. And that particular individual, we struck up a great conversation. We were actually at the Small Business Expo here in Phoenix last fall, I think it was. And great connection. Really appreciated the level of engagement, his passion for business and everything like that, as Koytt mentioned. We had a great connection. He actually even introduced us to one of our current clients. And then he went on a we call it the road show, basically, and he's traveling across the U.S. So he's quite busy with what he's doing, but he's basically going around to that same show. He's doing every one of those throughout the United States that they do throughout the course of the year. So in that path, for him, that's phenomenal. I lost the opportunity to really kind of connect with him for the solutions that Galt brings. And so I happened to come across Koytt. I think it was on Alignable or something like that. Maybe LinkedIn.
Yeah. Actually, I think it was a cold call email, actually. Yeah.
Oh, was it? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, it worked.
Nice.
But so we connected and, I had, like I said, I wanted to kind of work with these guys and some of the services they offer. David, as you know, at My Biz Coaches, one of the things we constantly look to strive to provide is to make these kind of connections for our business partners, our client partners, and we vet them on their behalf, right? And we make sure that they're people that we're confident we can refer to our clients. And so Koytt and I had a great time connecting, lots of conversation about some of our experiences and our life experiences. And I was just really impressed with him. And I'm like, this is the kind of guy I can do business with, and I can have the confidence that I can refer to my clients. So that's, and when he started sharing with me about what they do and his passion for what he does and some of his background, I'm like, you got to be on the show, dude.
Yeah, it was, we had it booked down for a 30-minute conversation, just a quick get to know each other. And
Wait, you're not doing me any favors, man. You're not doing me any favors right now.
it went to 1 hour and 15 minutes. But most of it was just getting to know each other. It wasn't all business. We were just getting to know each other. But yeah, so we had a good conversation.
Koytt, you could have said it was 3 hours and David had been like, really, that's it?
I somehow believe that. I believe it.
Well, it sounds like we may need to bring you back for a networking / prospecting episode down the road. So that's
there
awesome.
You go.
Well, cool. Well, appreciate the backstory there, and excited to dive into our topic today, which is really finance tips for small business. And as you both know, right, small business owners really face a ton of challenges. And so I'd be curious, Koytt, as you're working with your clients in the small business space, how do you help them navigate some of those obstacles?
Yeah, I think it's important to first look at the troubles they're facing. So if we take last year, for instance, 595,000 small businesses closed, shut their doors. So if we look at the stats on that, 82% of those companies cited cash flow as the issue. And then 29% cited they just flat ran out of money. Yeah. So, when I hear that question, I automatically think of financial, because those are some of the biggest problems that they're facing is how to manage their cash flow. And so, Jay Galt, we have 3 pillars that we kind of attack that with. We have the personal credit building or business credit building. We have business financial management, and we have business funding. So for the credit building, we have our 7-step process that walks them through credit building. For the management side, financial management side, every business, every member of Jay Galt gets assigned a personal credit analyst to kind of walk them through, hold their hand while they go through the process. And also on the financial management side, we have another software application that we use, which is great. It's called Cashflow Mapping Tool. So that really helps them out as well. And then at the business funding part, we'll give them access as a member to hundreds of vendors and lenders that are there for them, for their benefit. So those are kind of the 3 pillars that we kind of approach that problem with.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know a lot of business owners, right? One of the struggles they face early on, right, is that lack of credit. So they end up personally guaranteeing a lot of things in their financing. And I know that's something that you work with your clients on. So can you tell us a bit about kind of some of the ways that you help your clients navigate away and remove those personal guarantees?
Yeah, that's our flagship. So, and that's our 7-step custom credit builder. And, our goal with that is, let me just explain a little bit about business credit for those who might not be really keen on it. So business credit runs from 0 to 100. And you also have 4 different tiers. So there's a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. You start at tier 1, and then we eventually get your way up to tier 4. And, we try to get you to, our goal at the end of 8 to 12 months is to get you an 80 tier 4 plus. That's where the magic happens. That's where stuff starts to happen for you. That gives you a lot of access to different vendors and lenders and stuff like that.
Awesome. And I think you mentioned a couple times the 7-step system. So can you kind of break that down for us, exactly what that includes and kind of how you walk your clients through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the 7-step system, it's basically the way it's your fundability score, how we get you fundability. And what I mean by fundability is we know exactly what all these vendors and lenders are looking for. We have their criteria. We know exactly what they want. So in this 7-step process, what we do is to get you exactly the way they want you to look. Awesome. So in one of the first steps we do so that's the ultimate goal. But, I'll just take you through a quick synopsis of, little small things. One of the first steps we do is we want to prove your credibility. And this step is shocking to me because it's so simple. We go through, make sure your phone number, your email, your address, everything's matched up in the system, because there's such a large portion of people that go and they get denied and they have no idea why. And it's mostly because of, like, a very high amount is because of fraudulent concerns.
Yeah.
And that could be something as little as not having the address matched up correctly with the state as it is with a different, credit reporting agency. That's an automatic denial. Another thing that's interesting is you have to have your number listed on 411. If it's not on a directory, it's an automatic denial. People have their cell phone denial. And I know I might be speaking to a lot of smaller businesses here, and some bigger business like, well, we don't need that. And that's true. You're going to have your stuff set up, but these are just some of the small things that get caught up in the whole process of you getting a loan or you getting a vehicle. You can't have your home address listed, so we make sure you don't have that. So once we kind of go through that credibility stage is step one, then we go look to get you registered with all three of the credit reporting agencies for business. So there's three. There's Duns & Brad, there's Experian Business, and Equifax Business. Now, the tricky part about these is you want stuff reporting on all three to build up your credit, your EIN portfolio. Now, what happens is only 7% of the vendors and lenders that are out there are actually reporting. So you could have a company that's 10 years old, and you could be using different vendors and lenders and not getting any credit for it whatsoever. So we make sure that they tell us which credit reporting agency that they report to. That way, in step 2 and 3, we're plugging you into all three of those credit reporting agencies. So once we get you established, then we work on tier 1 credit. So tier 1 credit has its own group of vendors and lenders. So we'll open up a couple accounts and get you paying. So most of this process, a 7-step process, it happens over a 9 to 12 month period.
Okay.
So that's where the work's done. But it only requires about 2 to 3 hours of work from the business owner. So you kind of have to plug and play, wait, pay early, then your score goes up. Then we go to, say, tier 2. So that's a different group of vendors with higher amounts and different lenders. And you get the idea. You go to step 3, then you go to step 4, then you get to tier 4. And that's 80 plus tier 4 is where the magic happens for business. Like I said earlier, that's going to be, you're going to get your big amounts. You're going to get corporate credit cards, not business credit cards. You're going to have access to real estate funding for automobiles, equipment. It just opens up all the doors, because what the banks want to see, they don't care about your profit. They don't care about how much money you're making. They care about your payment history. They care that you are a sound financial company and you have a good EIN score. So once they see that 80 tier 4, that's just like, good, you're exactly the way we want. Here, take what you want. Here's 50,000. Here's 100,000. And the way business credit works is, if they give you 50 and you use 50, that's a pat on the back. They're like, we're going to give you 50 more. That differs from, the personal credit system, as if you have about 30% usage, then it starts to decrease. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. It was one of the conversations when Koytt and I were kind of going through our first, getting to know each other. And David, as you remember, with my trucking business, we had a lot of success with the trucking business early on, and we grew really fast. It was probably one of the downfalls of the growth of the company was we were undercapitalized for how quickly we were able to grow. And despite leveraging some of the tools that Koytt referenced, and I didn't know Jay Galt at the time, but I got lucky and stumbled my way through this process. But one of the stumbling blocks that we ran into was, well, you're not in business for 2 years yet. And because we weren't in business for 2 years, we don't get the, immediate EIN credibility, all that kind of stuff. We were still building the business. I literally was at times while we were buying new trucks, By halfway through the fleet, so we had 26 trucks. So by the time we got to 10, 11 trucks, the companies were leasing and or we were purchasing under the company name. So not my personal credit, but mostly because they're like, no, you have 10 trucks. We're not lenient. We're not going to give you any more money to give trucks, right? And the killer was that to your point, Koytt, that my issue was on my personal credit, because that's basically what we use to get everything launched. I had like a 580 FICO, not because I wasn't paying my bills, but because everything was, everything had balances on it. It was, and I'm constantly using the money and funneling it through the business to get the business to grow, knowing full well it's the worst way to do it, but you don't have an option. Right. And the EIN was established, but I wasn't trying to build any credit because I didn't realize what we needed to do. And then as we started doing it and people would come to me and say, oh, actually, you guys have a pretty good score. I think we were in the 60s or something like that at that point. And then we started getting company credit cards and we had other options. But in the beginning, it was tough because I went from like a 760 FICO. It wasn't 580. It was probably like 620 or something like that. But it went from a 760 down to a 625 or something like that. And it was killing me because we were carrying a heavy balance. And the issue was I'm paying it off, but it would go right back up because diesel fuel, with that many trucks, we were $10,000-$15,000 a month in diesel fuel. So it was almost impossible to keep up with. And it wasn't until later when we got and Koytt, I was telling you about this, then we went to Pilot and we went to some of these other companies. And then that's when we started getting qualified for like $50,000 lines of credit for diesel. But it took a lot of frustrating, like literally max out the card, pay it off, turn around, max it out again, pay it off. That was
your EIN. It was tied to your EIN the entire time, right?
Right. Correct. Yep. Exactly.
And did it had the business name on it. It said business card, business name. Exactly. So, that's the difference between business credit and corporate credit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, Eric, how long did it take you to get from when you knew about building credit? How long did it take you to get to the point where they were like, yeah, you're good? How long did it take you? How many?
Well, I would say it was probably the better part of 9 months.
That's pretty dang good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, to your point, it was a lot of trial and error in the process of doing that though. It was super frustrating because we were just growing so fast. It was like literally I had people tell me, well, maybe you shouldn't grow anymore. And I'm like, how do you say no to more business? So I'm like, and it probably realistically, honestly, and this is part of the reason why I became a coach. I'm like, had I had a CFO and an experienced CFO that basically said, hey, here's the deal. Let's give it 90 days. Let's run with what we got. Let's not push the envelope. And it had a better strategy. It probably would have played out better than it did when it was all said and done. But Koytt, to your point, it was, people were throwing opportunities at us and I'm like figuring out every angle I could to try and make this, pull it together and get more trucks and expand. But that was a real challenge. And I would venture to say that there's a lot of small businesses that as they're scaling up, they run into the same type of problem because they don't have any business credit and it's hampering their personal life. I mean, heaven forbid for whatever reason, I had to buy a new house during that period of time. I wouldn't have been able to do it.
No.
Right. There's no way. If I had to buy a personal car, I probably would have struggled with getting at least the kind of car that I wanted anyway, because my credit score was so low based on just the high volumes of credit that we were running through my personal cards.
Yeah. And some people don't even notice that, like, that's why their credit score is dropping. Did you know that immediately? That
I was familiar enough with my personal credit to know exactly why it was pulling it down. Yeah. Yeah, but to your point, a lot of people don't understand that. They're like, well, I'm paying my bills. So I'm like, yeah, but when you're maxing out the card every 2 weeks, even if you pay it off, you're maxing out every 2 weeks. Every time that whenever Experian or whoever it is, whenever they pull and they look at the balance and they see the balance is like 90% of the max of credit, it's going to pull you down substantially.
Yeah, and that's why it fathoms me. I've been in the financial industry for 13 plus years, and this was not even a topic of conversation with any of my clients or anybody else. And all I did was work with business owners on finances. And so, that's when I heard Jay Galt, I was like, wow, this is brilliant, because I face this as a business owner myself. And how do I build my EIN number? Because before this, there was no blueprint that was available to me or that I had seen. It seems like it should be at the forefront of a business owner's education on EIN building, because it is the foundation for your financial success. You have to have that. I mean, you don't have to. There's businesses that can survive without it, but they're doing the same thing that you were doing.
And they're doing themselves a grand disservice, because quite honestly, eventually an opportunity is going to come along that they can't capitalize on because they're not in a position to be able to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where, if you get into, you can read Rich Dad, Poor Dad or some of the other people, but they talk about credit is bad. Credit's only bad if you mismanage it, if you misuse it. And the issue becomes when in business, it's like without credit, I mean, you're destined to a relatively smaller business, and very seldom are people able to, even if they're able to deal with their existing cash flows, credit allows you to manage it better. Like a simple line of credit for the right size business, $100,000 line of credit for the right size business is just what they need to bridge a gap in a slow period of time. Right? You take your average landscaper, pool installer, I don't care what it is, if a decent sized line of credit, which, by the way, Koytt, we talked about this, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. They would have had to have gotten that while they're in a good financial position, because if they get to a point where things are tight and the P&Ls for the last 90 days don't look as good as they did, when they go to apply for that line of credit, the likelihood of getting a $100,000 line of credit drops dramatically.
Sure. Yes, absolutely.
So it's like you need to apply for it before you need it, so that when the time comes that you need it, it's available to you.
Well, absolutely. And that goes into, being prepared and for just situations economically, politically that happen in the marketplace. That's why it's good to do this as soon as possible if you don't already have it established, because, I'll just use COVID because everybody knows about how that affected business.
Great point.
If you get to COVID and you're like, shoot, we don't have any credit built up or we don't have any funds, and then all of a sudden we need to go out and get a loan, it's too late to be able to get approved for that loan, because you haven't worked on building up your credit and your credit score. So it's just too late at that point.
Right. Yeah. Well, actually, I take that one step further. Not only is it too late, but every bank is now puckering up, going, what nobody knows what's going on. They're not lending to anybody. And the crazy part is, had you had access to, let's say, again, $100,000 line of credit, and you could bridge the payroll gap and the shortfall, some businesses were essential, so they stayed open. But if you could bridge that gap for about 60 to 90 days, the government finally gets their poop together and decides, hey, let's create this PPP program.
Yeah.
And there you go. You got a backstop that now comes in and funds it, but you didn't have it in the short term, you're screwed. Right? If you didn't have access to that short-term backstop of a line of credit to ride it out until the government figured out the PPP, because it took 2 or 3 months for some of those people to get those checks. And that was fast, but at least you could have bridged the gap. And then they came out the second one and everything like that. And people that were considered essential and stayed open through those 3 to 6 months, depending on where you were, or a year and a half, depending on where you were in the United States. But the point is, you had an opportunity to kind of bridge through that gap, but without that resource, or a ton of cash in the bank, right? Which isn't necessarily all that smart either. Right? It's like you're sitting on a ton of cash, you're paying taxes on a lot of money. You want to make sure that you have it in the right places and positioned correctly. So there's a lot to say about having good business credit, and I can't reinforce, having personally lived through it, not just in that situation, but actually in 2 situations. But the trucking business was the most prevalent, because it was such a significant. Didn't expect the business to grow nearly as fast as it did.
Yeah,
that it was, but hard.
Yeah, that's why our conversation was so interesting too. Is one of our main clients is in transportation. Like, that's just one of the verticals that we do really well with in transportation and trucking, is because they have such a cash intensive business. They need a lot of money. There's fuel costs are going up. They need new trucks. They need new drivers. It's hard finding loyal drivers. So, that's along with trades, because they have to buy a lot of equipment, and the same thing goes for their employees.
Right.
But those companies benefit quite a bit just because they're cash intensive.
Right. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, as we're talking earlier, Koytt, what I was thinking is the frustration that a lot of business owners have. Let's say they understand the need to get a line of credit and to grow and all those other things, but to get rejected and not understand why, I think is so frustrating for a business owner, and they don't even know, what do I need to do to get it? How do I fix it? And so having somebody like you in that 7-step system kind of walk them through that, I think is really important, especially if it's a first-time business owner who's never been through that before. Very eye-opening.
Yeah, it is. A funny story about that. We had a client that he owns several different businesses. Before he signed on as a member with Jay Galt, I think he had $100 million business or something. And he also owned a plane. But a month or two before, he went out to buy a truck for his company, and he got denied. Didn't tell him why. He had no idea. Company's been in business. He's got plenty of things. It's like, what are you talking about? Like how much money my company makes, but it wasn't about that. So he had they could pull 3 reports, Experian, Equifax, Duns and Brad, and the agency or the dealership just happened to pull the one that wasn't being reported on. His other 2 ones were easy. Yeah, they would have given it to him in a second, but they just happened to pull the one institution that wasn't being reported on. And he had no idea. He just got denied, and he was livid. Until about 2 or 3 months after talking with us, we're like, this is why you did it. This is what they pulled. He was like,
right. That's crazy.
Makes sense.
And I was just going to say that I think the other piece to that, sorry, David, but the other piece to that is, to your point earlier, nobody's educating people on this. So at the end of the day, the fact that guy was as successful as he financially had the money, everything like that. But the reality is, at the end of the day, he wasn't familiar with it. Right. And so the crazy part is, because nobody's educating people on this, that there's this air of mystery around it. Like, how do you get good business credit or whatever? I mean, hell, up until all these recent issues with the personal credit arena, there's still, questions about, how is my FICO score determined, right? But in business, it's even more so, because there's fewer people that operate in the business space, and fewer yet that actually use business credit. So nobody really knows how it works. And that's why the education you guys provide is so valuable, because it helps them make more intelligent decisions. I mean, you mentioned it earlier. I was going to say it should be in Business Finance 101. This is how you get your good business credit score, and these are the things you should be doing. And like anything else that we do, it's like, this is something that everybody should know, but they don't. And that's the huge opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. When everybody's setting up a business, it should be numero uno. One of the things you should have a plan with, and it's such a hard system to wrangle in, because there's, like I said, only 7% of the people actually report. So how are you supposed to know?
Right.
It could take years. That's what you said. It took you less than a year. That's impressive. Normally it takes businesses years and years to get them to where we can get them in 9 to 12 months.
Right.
It varies on what industry you're in your line of business. But
yeah. And you know what? I think the one advantage I had, and I tell people this all the time, when I was in school, I took accounting. And so I knew my P&Ls, I knew how to pull my reports. I knew what the impact of, what a good financial report should look like, what my balance sheet should look like. And I was paying attention to that. So when people ask for certain data, and I'd be like, well, I can give you this, I can show you my P&L, but here's my business plan. Here are my projections. And you can see that we're exceeding our projections dramatically. And so because I had that financial acumen, I was able to speak to most of the bankers or people that I engage with in the financials situations like that. I was able to speak to them on terms that they could see that I knew what the hell I was talking about. And I think that played a lot into my ability to influence people to allow us to have some of that credit that we may not necessarily have been able to get. But that was, the financial acumen that I had, it really helped me in that scenario. Whereas I'll say this over and over on this show, most small business owners lack that understanding and insight in their business.
100% true.
Yep.
Well, as you were talking about, missing out on those opportunities, right, Eric, whether that was, signing up a new account and having the trucks to service it or, some other line of business. What I think about is, for a small business owner, there can be a ton of competition depending on, what sector you're in and all that. So I'm curious, Koytt, as you're kind of working with clients, what are some of the maybe insights you share with our audience on how that financing or some of the services you provide allow those small business owners to stay competitive and stay ahead in their market?
Yeah. Well, honestly, I'm a little bit biased because I'm a financial guy, but, Eric just kind of said that a little bit, but I think being financially sound is one of the most prudent things you could do as a business owner. Because like Eric just said, a lot of people aren't financially savvy with the financial part of it. So I literally think that if you keep ahead with your cash flow, you have some kind of cash flow forecasting tool, where your money's going, what's money's coming in, where you're spending it, what percentage is being allocated to savings, what percentage is being allocated to future growth, all sorts of those things. I think that gives you such a better advantage than most businesses, and, especially your competitors in the market. If you're more financially savvy than they are, even if you have an average product, I think that, you have a great chance as opposed to having a good product with terrible financial management.
That's a great point.
Yeah. Yeah. It keeps you nimble, right? It gives you options, which allows you to navigate, which is what you need. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it goes back to the COVID thing. A financially sound company, and there were a lot of those that hit COVID, they were fine because they had planned ahead. They might have done their credit building. I'm not saying that's the only thing you could do to be financially savvy, but that's one of the things they probably had in store. One of my clients is a technology company. A lot of their digital signage actually, and a lot of companies were going out of business. It's a very cash intensive industry. And they were so financially set, the way everybody else is going out of business, they were investing money into R&D the entire time. And they developed a new app throughout through COVID, and they ended up great. But that's only because of years and years and years of diligent financial management, of knowing your balance sheet, knowing your P&Ls, knowing where your expenses are going today and tomorrow. And we love accountants. I have one, everybody has one, but you need something to complement, your accountant. The accountant looks at the past, tells you where all your money's going. We're spending too much here. We're spending too much here. But a financial analyst or some kind of cash flow tool that you can look at today and see where you're at it's so important to implement.
It's a great point. And I say this all the time, having gone to school for accounting, I'm like, I understand that there's a couple of different ways to look at your financial portion of your business, which is accounting is great because it looks at what happened in the past. The problem with the P&L that I look at for, let's say, for the sake of argument, the end of July, it's great, except it only tells me what happened in the last 30 days. Or even if I look for a year to date, it's the January 1st to today. That's great, but I'm still looking in the past. What I need to be able to do is take the data that from the past and take something and create a forward-looking, right? Take your statement of cash flows and project it out and say, okay, well, based on that, here's some things that I might want to account for. And oh, by the way, I kind of understand that the market's kind of funky right now. Banks have been pulling back their lines of credit. The political unrest is a little bit funky in the market. Interest rates might go up yet again, right? And you start factoring those things in because you're intelligent, you're paying attention to what's going on in the world, and you take the data that you've looked at. That's great, but that doesn't help you unless you can use it to project forward how it might impact your business and make better decisions, because that's the only way you make better decisions with good information.
Yes, and it's got to tell you where you're at right now and where you're going tomorrow. And that also gives the business owner peace of mind. I mean, what's the one thing that keeps a business owner, entrepreneur up is finances. That's one of the things. So if they have a good idea of where they're sitting at right now with their cash flow, and they know that if we make X amount, then we put X amount in here, that puts them ahead of the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Koytt, it sounds like you work with a lot of different businesses, different shapes, sizes, industries. Any success stories that stand out to you of clients you've worked with recently?
It's a good question. There's so muddled in. There's a lot, but I'll stick to one that's kind of recent and with Galt that I think that we can all relate to. So there was a trucking client, 9-year-old trucking company. We brought them in as members and we pulled their credit report. And been in business 9 years, and they had $1,000 only in recommended credit. That was their entire credit line. Eric, you were in the trucking business. How much do you think you could fill up? How much do you think you can do? What can you do with $1,000 in the trucking industry?
Absolutely nothing.
That's right. That's right.
Order some office supplies.
You could buy air fresheners for every truck. You could do that.
There you go.
You wouldn't cover it.
I couldn't even replace a tire with $1,000.
No. But but she was doing fine. But here's what happened. Within 10 months of her signing on, that $1,000 went to $724,000 within 10 months. And she was also able to add 4 new trucks to her fleet. And that was after 10 months. So that's what she did in that amount of time. Again, not every company is going to see that type of growth, but it's such a cash intensive industry that she was able to accumulate it that quick through our system.
Right. Well, now what I would say is to add to that is she had the financials to support that line of credit. She just didn't know how to go get the business credit.
Absolutely.
Right? Had she known how to do that, the financials would have supported it, and she wouldn't have operated that long with such a meager amount of credit available. But because she had the financials to support it, to your point, Koytt, she was able to really accelerate that quickly. And that is a significant amount in a short period of time to be able to put into a business like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we did is just change the way she was spending money. We didn't say, hey, spend more money. We're just like, hey, get credit for, no pun intended, get credit for what you're spending.
Right.
So, we find those vendors and lenders that provide, what she wanted in our system, and she just used them instead. And they go ahead and report to those credit reporting agencies, and that number just goes up and up and up.
Right.
Yeah. Well, as we're talking about, business owners having, limited cash flow, limited resources, I'm curious, Koytt, can you tell us a little bit about how you tailor the Galt services that you offer to the specific needs of your clients and really their budgets?
Yeah, that's to this. So how we tailor it for the budgets of small businesses?
Yeah, correct. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, well, Galt, we're all about small businesses, so we wanted to create a platform that is all encompassing and gives them the resources they need to be financially successful. And we wanted to do it at an affordable rate. We didn't want to price it so high that, only $5 million, $10 million companies were doing. We wanted people that were solopreneurs that work for themselves to have the option to use this as well. So, that's one of the ways is that we tailored it. We put it at a very affordable price. We have a one-time payment of $3,900 that takes the entire year. And that's what they pay. All the work is done in the first 9 to 12 months. And there's a couple of entry points. I was just telling a generic idea so people know, like, well, what's the cost? Well, it's $3,900 for the whole entire platform.
Well, yeah, I think that fits a lot of budgets out there. So that's awesome. Well, cool. Well, hey, tell us a little bit about, we've talking so much about, credit and financing. What are some of the things that you work with your clients on that allows them to better manage their risk?
Yeah. Okay. So first off, let's go back to how people set up a company. So we're business owners. What's the first thing we're told to go out and do? We're told to go out and set up an LLC, an S Corp, a C Corp to protect us, limited liability, and also to provide for taxes. However, what's one of the first things we do? We go out and spend our own money. We open up a bank account with our own money. We try to go get a credit card using an EIN that's not even established yet. So we put the cart before the horse, and we really can't do that. But what you're doing there when you go out and spend your own money to go get business cards is you're just, like we discussed earlier, just using your you're using your social security number instead of your EIN. So it has those negative effects. You're foregoing the entire purpose of why you set up that corporate veil around your business immediately.
Yeah.
So yeah, and one thing so when you don't have a developed EIN, banks and lenders and vendors, they look at you as a little kid. So imagine when you were 18 and you tried to go out and buy a house. The bank's going to look at you like, no, you don't have any credit history. There's no payment history. Okay, my dad's going to co-sign. That's what you are to the state, to your small business. So when you go in and you want a business loan, you want an SBA loan, you want a car loan, and you want it underneath your EIN for your business, they're going to look at this and they're going to say, you don't have the credit history to do that. Okay, we need your social too. So like Eric said, that's how he built his business initially. You know, it's going to wind you into a world of trouble, and you're going to end up owing money, and you're foregoing the whole point of setting that up and protecting yourself. And so that's why we have this system to where we build the EIN up to a point where the banks are just automatically look at you and they're like, oh, you're good to go.
Yeah, I love that analogy. That's awesome, right?
The 18-year-old trying to get credit.
Yeah.
That's
yeah,
literally
that's gonna co-sign. That's fun.
Yeah,
that's literally what business owners are to their small businesses. That's why they always have to put down their social, and that's how they know that there are people are wondering, like, do I have business credit or corporate credit? Do I have ties to the funding? Well, go look to see if you put down your social security number. If you had to do that on anything, then it's personally tied to you, and it's also affecting your personal credit. So I mean, if you sign something over with only your EIN, that's when it's true corporate credit, and there's no liability back towards you.
Which I'll bring that up. For the average small business owner that doesn't know the difference is going to do the same thing that I did and have the same issues that I had, not only in the front end, potentially in the back end. If the business doesn't work out, which, oh, by the way, 20% of small businesses fail in the first year, 50% fail in the first 3 to 5 years. I mean, the likelihood of being successful and not getting caught is not necessarily in your favor. It's not to say that you shouldn't do it. It's just that it's a reality of the circumstance. I mean, follow the math; it'll show you, right? So at the end of the day, the reality is that you should do everything you can to protect yourself, because if you don't, you're going to get exposed, and then you're going to put yourself. You mentioned SBA. One of the things that I am a proponent of is. We've talked extensively on a couple of shows, I should say, anyway, that we talked about, buy before you buy, then build a business rather than start a business from scratch. And I'm a big believer, more and more, having done that a couple of times throughout my career, and now even more so, because I know how hard it is to start something from scratch. Now, it's not always going to work, but if there's a way to do that, I highly encourage people to consider that, because I can get an SBA loan, which I'll get 80-90% of what I need to borrow to set up that business, but they're going to expect a guarantee. Absolutely. And so if you asked me, Eric, would you be willing to take, I don't know, let's just say for the sake of argument, a $500,000 SBA loan to buy a business, or a $50,000 SBA loan that you have to personally guarantee? Now I'm going to personally guarantee either way, but if I could do a $500,000 loan and get 90% of it through the SBA, and I only pay 50%, but I'm buying an existing business that already has cash flows that demonstrates it can support the loan payment for the next 10 years. I'm a lot more inclined at this point in my career, in my life, to go ahead and take that risk and put a guarantee and actually, guarantee my home as collateral in that case, because the business is established and I see that it's got a track record and it's got revenue coming in. And I'm like, okay, it's at least a calculated. I'm still taking a risk, but it's a calculated risk. Versus if I were to I take a $50,000 loan, if I can get a $50,000 loan, right, and put my home up as collateral or whatever, and go and start a business from scratch with $50,000. I'm 10-1 odds I'm going to take the existing business over the standalone for 50. I don't care how great my idea is. At my age, and where I'm at, and things that have happened to me in the past, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to take that risk again. And then a year or 2 years into this, I can actually, I might not be able to get out from underneath the SBA loan, but the credit that I build, to your point earlier, Koytt, now as the business grows, I can transition off that obligation and those responsibilities. And once I pay that debt off, it's all on the business and I don't have to carry that personal obligation. But I think that's a big thing that a lot of people don't understand. You're always going to have risk. You're always going to have, some tie to you in some regard until you get to the certain point where you have the business credit to support it, right? I mean, unless I had 2 years to build up the business credit before I bought anything, then that actually might be the better play. But there's a lot of things that they just don't know and don't understand and don't have the business or life experience to draw on to make those intelligent decisions. And that's probably the biggest frustration I see out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And to go back on when you're talking about the SBA loan and slowly moving that off, we have so many clients that are members that come on and they have an SBA loan and they have, it's tied to their personal residence or it's their rental properties are collateral. And that scares the heck out of them because they got a family to feed.
Right.
So one of the clients that I brought on recently, he has a $400,000 SBA loan. And, once we get to 80 tier 4 for him, they'll start moving, the bank will start moving that SBA loan over strictly to his EIN off his social security number because that number is high enough. Now that's going to do two things. That's going to help his business out dramatically. And it's also going to help out his personal social security because it doesn't have that 400,000 attached to it as a business loan. So it's going to go up.
You don't have the UCC lien on your house anymore. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's right.
No. And again, all stuff that nobody tells you and you figure it out after you've already made the mistake.
No, and that's what, that's why we talk about, Main Street to Wall Street, because this information is practiced by it's practiced by all the corporations. When's the last time you've heard an owner of a corporation taking a loan out or putting down leverage to grow his company with his own personal finances? It just doesn't happen. And they could even file for a corporation could go out of business and the owner, is not affected by it because he's not personally tied to it. The bankruptcy doesn't affect him whatsoever. He had attorneys, he had CFAs, CFOs, accountants on his side that he pays a lot of money to, and they bail him out. They set it up properly the way a business is designed to be set up. Right,
exactly. Well, and we could go on that topic for hours.
Yeah.
But it's when you have the resources to get the best financial people out there, you have access to some of the best possible knowledge you can have. And I've learned the hard way that, and I'm with some of those people, and I've learned the hard way that without that insight, without that knowledge, you're what's a good analogy? You're bringing the knife to the gunfight or something like that. I mean, it's like you got one leg and one hand tied behind your back in an MMA match or something. I don't know, but the point is that without that insight, without that knowledge, you're hamstrung. And that's why I highly recommend you look at somebody like a Jay Galt, because that type of service, that type of solution, that information is so invaluable, particularly for anybody in a small business. And I would say, quite honestly, that's probably up to 20, even $50 million. Not that it caps, you guys have a cap or anything, but at some point you probably have access to, at that point, a CFO who's got the experience and the knowledge, but maybe not. But that's still what that was. So 91% of small business owners never achieve $1 million in gross revenue on an annualized basis. 99.4 never reached $10 million.
That's incredible.
So 99%+ of all small business owners would benefit from the type of information, because if they're doing less than $10 million, odds are they don't have any clue about business credit. I would say 97% of those 99% probably don't know.
No, you're absolutely right. And you mentioned going to those expos. That's when Jay Galt sits down in front of those people in the expos. There's hundreds of people there, and at the end they raise, who's interested in talking. Everybody raises their hand because they go around the room and they know about their FICO score, but they're like, my EIN, I don't know. I don't know.
Right.
And so it's a very uncommon thing, and people don't have a lot of knowledge about it. And like I said, it should be one of the building blocks that we were taught in school, with financial education. A lot of other things.
And not to pick on you, but this is somebody who has an MBA, right?
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, 13 years, you're exactly right. Whatever I'm telling you is I set my business up wrong, the same way I use my own assets. I didn't leverage them. And, my business is a little bit different and yours is too, just because we don't have that huge cash expenditure. But it was something that I didn't find out until 13 years of working with other business owners until I met Jay Galt.
Crazy.
Wow. It is.
Very cool. Well, let's say, we do the things you've talked about, Koytt, and we set up from the very beginning to minimize risk. And, we're walking through the 7 steps with you to build up our business credit. You talked a little bit about kind of some cash flow software that you use to help your clients maximize their cash flow. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So, if I talk about the Jay Galt Finance Suite, there's several different parts of it. So our flagship, which is the 7-step program that I told you about, then you're going to get your personal consultant that's going to be assigned to you, and they're going to draft a plan for you to get to where you need. Everybody has different ways of how they're going to get there. So that's something that they'll sit down and do with you. Then another thing we include in there, and this is at no additional cost, is a cash flow mapping software. And you heard me talk about it a little bit about it, but it's hard to explain because you can put in all the little numbers and change it around as much as you want. But what it does is it gives you projections. It lets you know where you are right now, where you're going, and you could you can run different hypotheticals that it will save for you. Like, oh, if we do this project, how will it look if we allocate funds towards this? Okay, let's pull and save that one. What if we want to save to invest in this? What would we do? So it gives you all sorts of different projections and scenarios you can play with. But most importantly, it gives a scenario that you're in right now. It says where you're at right now. Where's my cash? Where is it going to be next month? What do we need to get to this month to be where we need to be next month? And like I said, it's a great tool to have for business owners. Doesn't matter if it's with us or other people. It's just one of those things you need to have, whether it's to a software or, outsourcing a fractional CFO. I've heard Eric talk about bringing in financial experts to help your company out. That's a huge piece, but that's what our software does. That's what our cash flow mapping software does for you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. And that's going to certainly help out. And as Eric and I talk a lot, right? One of the things that business owners have in mind, right, is, as they maximize their cash flow, they start thinking about, or at least hopefully thinking about some form of an exit strategy. And I know, Eric, you've talked about this extensively, is they think because their business is doing well, it's valued at, some very high multiple. And the reality is oftentimes they overvalue it themselves, and they find out what their business is really worth. It's not quite the, awesome retirement that they had planned, and it's kind of a rude awakening. And so, Koytt, I was interested to learn that you actually offer a free business valuation to your clients. Is that true?
Yeah, and you're 100% right on that. I'm laughing at because I've done these with other companies for people, and it's just sometimes you get the weirdest look, like, get out of my office with that number. Like, whoa, man, you're just reading the numbers.
You kill the messenger, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's like I told you earlier, Jay Galt wants to make this as fully encompassing and provide all the resources to these small business owners that they could possibly imagine, and do it at a great price point that's viable to them. It's such a small investment for the return they get. So every year on their 1-year anniversary, we do a business valuation. It's a 15-20 page, a full set of your business valuations, projections, recommendations. It's very comprehensive, but it's great for business owners to get that for free, because that stuff costs, and I'm lowballing it, $8,000. There's some that cost far more than that, but we'll just say those cost $8,000 per year, and we provide those to you on your anniversary date for free.
Yeah, I've seen them go for as much as 15,000.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that's important, right? Because you could have great credit, you could have strong cash flow, and a low valuation. And so I think it's important to work with somebody that can help you piece all those things together and make sure you're looking at your finances holistically, right? And that's something that not a lot of people offer, and frankly, a lot of business owners don't really think about because they tend to be so focused on the operations, right? And so I think that's an important, annual checkup on, are we getting you closer to the ultimate goal, not just this year's sales goal or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and absolutely, you're right on that. I mean, there's so many things that the business owners worry about. There's marketing their product. There's customer service. There's how to get more clients. What's sales and marketing, and the finance part. Some people don't want to talk about it. It's tough to talk about finances in business. People don't want to. I don't want to see the numbers. But it's important to have a picture of those. So it's one of the most important parts about your business is knowing your finances.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as we get ready to wrap up here, can you kind of walk us through the process of, say somebody's watching this, listening to this, and they say, hey, I want to work with Koytt, I want to engage his services. What does that process look like, and what can clients expect once they start working with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'd sit down, anybody who wants to chat with me, we'd sit down for just a consultation. A free consultation, just to chat. We're just going to get to know each other. I'm going to learn a little bit about your business and learn your goals. And then, we can determine how, or even if I can help you out. And then we can go from there. And the onboarding process is very simple. Like I said, one-time annual payment, if that's the entry point you choose. And then we'll immediately assign you a credit analyst that will be in contact with you. And they'll start working on step one with you immediately to get you going, because we want to get people going on this as soon as possible, because time is not our friend. We want to get it in there as soon as possible, because the sooner you start open up a line of credit and it starts reporting, the sooner you can get to your goal. So once we have a credit report analyst assigned to you, they'll walk you through the program. You spend about 2 to 3 hours a month of your own time. That's it. And then the rest is just making sure you pay early. We say pay early. And that's the onboarding process. And then, you get your software, your cash value software. We'll walk you through how to do that. And, when it comes time for your annual business valuation, then we'll do that as well. So it's a very simple process. It's a membership business. So there's not a whole lot of work that they have to do. It's very turnkey.
Awesome. Well, a lot of great insights today. Is there anything else that you want to share about Jay Galt with our audience?
No, I think I've talked a lot, and I've talked a lot about Jay Galt and what they do. If you're listening and it seems interesting to you, or you want to know more, or just have a couple questions, encourage you to reach out to me, and I can get you on the schedule, and we'll just have a nice chat. I'm not real salesy. I'm more of a consultative person, so Eric can confirm that.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it won't take you an hour and 15 minutes for most people.
Awesome. Well, cool. And we'll have a link to your site in our show notes. So if somebody's interested in taking that action step, they can click on that and schedule that consult. So great stuff. Thanks again, Koytt. Eric, anything that you want to share, about My Biz Coaches? Maybe a certain special announcement that you've been dragging out for, multiple weeks, just throwing it out there, hypothetically.
All right. So I have a baby announcement.
Oh, okay. Here we go. All right. You got it out of him, Koytt. Great job.
So let me check my calendar here, make sure I get it right. So on Wednesday, August 9th at 9 a.m., we'll be conducting our first webinar. And David, thank you for your assistance in helping us put this together. We're actually launching our first webinar. And in that webinar, we'll be offering an hour's worth of content on how to leverage AI in all your sales and marketing activity. So super excited to make that announcement. This has been a project that's, I would say we started focusing on AI somewhere around January or February of this year, and began to really kind of poke at this and recognize that there's a huge opportunity for people, small business owners, to leverage. The problem is there's a lot of hype out there and help them understand, what the difference between the hype and what's actually going to help impact their business. There's a lot of things that can be done, and it's getting more and more cost effective. I am a true believer at this point in the development of not just AI, but in some of the technical, or I should say technology-based service solutions that are out there that in the next, I'm going to say 3 years, maybe on the outside 5, the small business owner, the difference between a small business owner and a large corporate organization is going to be so reduced. It's going to be reduced by so much. I can't tell you that. I can't imagine what the multiple will be. It will be reduced so much that the average small business owner, talking even solopreneur, will actually be able to compete with the big corporations and their own spaces, and it, because of the ability of technology. Now, if something changes in that in the way that they're rolling out technology, i.e., something stamps out AI or something like that, that might slow that down. But I'm just really, the more that I see the level of technology, I mean, we literally have just this week we found 2 different software applications that will literally remove a need for a headcount. Actually, between the 2 software solutions that we uncovered, for the price point, we could actually, what I had projected would literally would require an entire full-time person at $4,000 a month plus taxes and everything like that, we can replace for a few $100s a month. So that's not to say that we don't want people working for us. It's just, we know that there are people that don't want to do low maintenance. What's the term I want to use, David? Low skill tasks that average person doesn't want to be doing anyway. And we can replace it with a software solution that will actually act as good or better in some cases, certainly better than I would do it with some of the technology or some of the tactical skills that are required. And you could replace it with an AI solution for a few $100s, depending on the situation. In some cases, it's even less than $100. So kind of depends on what you're looking at, how your business will use it. But that's where we're really investing our time, is understanding how we can help you do that better and be more efficient in your business and get more value, get more of your life back in your business, which is, as a small business owner, all of us can benefit from that. So I'm excited to make that announcement. Again, David, thank you for the partnership with Tier 1 and Train, Lead, Grow, because that's a huge opportunity for us to launch that, and excited about the opportunities moving forward.
Awesome.
Exciting.
Yeah. Check it out. We'll have a link to your site as well, Eric. So if you guys want to learn more about that webinar, just head over to mybizcoaches.com and we'll have all the information there. So, Eric, we're getting closer. Not quite the big announcement, but at least
not yet.
So
not yet.
That's exciting. And Koytt, again, thank you for your time. And to our audience, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next episode of the Biz Coach Show.
Thanks, everybody.